Welcome to another C2 Proficiency ESL-lounge reading lesson video. Today we will be reading 4 museum perspectives on a single artifact to analyze how different experts can interpret the same object in completely different ways. Let's begin with some vocabulary. Aesthetics, the set of principles concerned with the nature and appreciation of beauty. Alloy, a metal made by combining 2 or more metallic elements. Apex, the top or highest part of something. Calibrated, carefully assessed, set, or adjusted. Confluence, the junction of 2 rivers, an act or process of merging. Corroborating, confirming or giving support to a statement, theory, or finding. Demarcation, the action of fixing the boundary or limits of something. Iconography, the visual images and symbols used in a work of art. Nexus, a connection or series of connections linking 2 or more things. Predicated on, based on a particular idea or belief. Stratification, the arrangement or classification of something into different groups. Sublime, of such excellence, grandeur, or beauty as to inspire great admiration or awe. Great. Now you know the key words, let's read the texts. You are going to read 4 expert interpretations of a single museum artifact. Read them carefully to understand each expert's analysis and viewpoint. Afterwards, you will answer 10 questions to check your interpretation of each expert's analysis. Let's start with text A. William Barker, economic historian. While its aesthetic qualities are undeniably impressive, to truly understand this salt cellar, one must see it primarily as a nexus of powerful nascent global economic forces. Salt in the 16th century was not a mere condiment, it was a strategic commodity, the veritable white gold of its era, absolutely essential for preserving food in a world without refrigeration. Its control defined trade routes, which were arteries of both commerce and conflict. This object's story begins not in the London workshop where it was fashioned, but in the distant hazardous salt mines of Central Europe. The silver itself, almost certainly plundered from the New World, tells an even darker tale of colonial exploitation and forced labor. The workshop that likely made it was located near St. Paul's Cathedral, a hub of commerce. Therefore, this is not an object of simple luxury to be admired in a vacuum. It is a dense economic text, a tangible embodiment of the vast, often brutal, networks of trade, labor, and finance that were reshaping the early modern world. Its very existence is predicated on a confluence of international markets that were just beginning to flex their global muscle. End of text A. Let's continue. Harriet Walsh, social historian. This salt cellar offers us a rare and uniquely intimate glimpse into the social theatre of the Elizabethan upper class. Its placement on the dining table was a matter of immense, unspoken significance, a carefully calibrated signal of status, power, and hierarchy. This ornate vessel held the precious salt and was placed in the privileged above the salt area of the table, where only the host, his family, and most honored guests were seated. Similar customs were of course observed in other European courts of the time, but the English were particularly rigid. To be seated below the salt was to be publicly and unambiguously marked as a person of inferior social standing. This object, therefore, functioned as a powerful and visible instrument of social demarcation. It enforced and made manifest the rigid social stratifications of the age. Its elaborate design was not merely for show, it was a clear statement of the owner's wealth, and crucially, their unassailable place at the apex of the social pyramid. End of text B. Let's continue. Enzo Savallon, art historian and curator. One must strenuously resist the temptation to view this piece solely as a historical document or, worse, an economic artifact. First and foremost, it is a sublime work of art, a masterpiece of late Renaissance goldsmithing that stands on its own merits. The artist, whose identity is sadly lost to us, demonstrates a breathtaking and almost superhuman virtuosity. One should look closely at the way the allegorical figures are rendered with such classical grace, the sheer technical brilliance of the chasing and repoussé work on the silver, a feat of immense skill. This is not mere craftsmanship, it is the product of a singular and highly sophisticated artistic vision. The design's complex iconography, which draws heavily on obscure classical myths, speaks to the humanist intellectual culture of the period's elite. The museum acquired it at a provincial auction in 1952 for a surprisingly modest sum. While its social function is interesting, to reduce it to that function is to be blind to its intrinsic aesthetic value. Its true significance lies in its form and its timeless beauty. End of text C. Let's continue. Isabel Cole, material scientist. My esteemed colleagues have expertly discussed the social and artistic contexts, but my focus is on the object itself, on its silent physical and material testimony. Through non-invasive X-ray fluorescence analysis, we have been able to determine the precise elemental composition of the silver alloy, with remarkable accuracy. These advanced analytical techniques allow us to unlock secrets that would have been impossible to discover through traditional archaeological methods alone. The specific trace elements, particularly the levels of lead and bismuth, strongly suggest the metal originated from the Potosi mines in modern-day Bolivia. This scientific data directly corroborates the colonial trade narrative proposed by the economic historians. Furthermore, microscopic examination of the tool marks reveals the use of specific punches and gravers, allowing us to reconstruct the artisan's intricate techniques. Such techniques would have taken many years of apprenticeship to master fully. We also detected minute traces of sodium chloride and, more surprisingly, lead acetate, a dangerously toxic sugar substitute common in the 16th century. This tells us the vessel was not merely decorative, but was actively used. Okay, time for a few questions to check your understanding. Which expert argues that reducing the object to its utilitarian role fundamentally misunderstands its significance? Pause the video now to think about your answer. The correct answer is C. Enzo Savallon. The text states that focusing only on what it's used for misses the point, and that to reduce it to that function is to be blind to its intrinsic aesthetic value. Question 2. Which expert views the object as a physical record of global commercial activity? Pause the video now to think about your answer. The correct answer is A. William Barker. The text describes the object as a dense economic text, a tangible embodiment of the vast networks of trade, labor, and finance. Question 3. Which expert suggests that English social customs were more inflexible than those elsewhere? Pause the video now to think about your answer. The correct answer is B. Harriet Walsh. The text notes that while similar customs existed elsewhere, the English were particularly rigid. Question 4. Which expert focuses on the physical evidence that can be gathered from the object's composition? Pause the video now to think about your answer. The correct answer is D. Isabel Cole. The text states that her focus is on the object itself, on its silent physical and material testimony, and discusses the elemental composition of the silver alloy. Question 5. Which expert argues most strongly against other experts' methodologies? Pause the video now to think about your answer. The correct answer is C. Enzo Savallon. The text states that one must strenuously resist the temptation to view this piece solely as a historical document or, worse, an economic artifact, using quite combative language in dismissing alternative analytical approaches. Question 6. Which expert uses forensic evidence to challenge assumptions about the object's purpose? Pause the video now to think about your answer. The correct answer is D. Isabel Cole. The text says that detecting minute chemical traces tells us the vessel was not merely decorative, but was actively used, challenging a potential assumption. Question 7. Which expert describes the object as a product of a ruthless and exploitative system? Pause the video now to think about your answer. The correct answer is A. William Barker. The text says the silver in the object tells an even darker tale of colonial exploitation and forced labor. Question 8. Which expert demonstrates how the object functioned as a tool of public humiliation? Pause the video now to think about your answer. The correct answer is B. Harriet Walsh. The text states that to be seated below the salt was to be publicly and unambiguously marked as a person of inferior social standing. Question 9. Which expert provides evidence that substantiates the theories of another expert? Pause the video now to think about your answer. The correct answer is D. Isabel Cole. The text says that the scientific data from the silver directly corroborates the colonial trade narrative proposed by the economic historians. Question 10. Which expert seems sad at not knowing a little more about the item? Pause the video now to think about your answer. The correct answer is C. Enzo Savallon. The text talks about the artist, whose identity is sadly lost to us, and Enzo is the only expert to use emotional language expressing regret about missing information regarding the object. Let's quickly summarize the lesson. On this screen you can review the main points of the text and the key vocabulary. Finally, here are a few discussion questions. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching this ESL Lounge video. Don't forget to subscribe for more lessons, and we'll see you in the next one.